Hello, my name is Grian, and today we're going to be doing something on the strange side. We're going to be making a fantasy house that's inside a shoe. This is the style of build that is organic meets structure, and it might not be for everyone, but if you want to take on a slightly different challenge, let's get straight into it. So the first thing that we need to do is make a footprint on the floor. Now, making a footprint isn't as easy as it sounds, and the larger the footprint you make, the easier it is to get the shape correct. I actually ended up editing my shape quite a lot, and you'll notice that it is not symmetrical. That's very, very important. This is a right foot, and I've covered in the entire base layer and added a second layer at the back to indicate where the heel is. If you struggle with this, go onto Google and find yourself a picture of a footprint, and it will help you immensely to get that shape right. Once we've done that, we then take the grey and brown stained clay and we're going to make the actual meat of the shoe itself. You may find this particularly difficult, mainly because it's such an organic and flowing shape. My advice is to start simple like I have, with just a few blocks going up and reaching over, and then adding any additional shaping afterwards. A good tip is make sure the bottom layers extend further along than every subsequent level. That will then give you the overriding shape, and then at the top you make sure it's nice and flat. Towards the ankle and the back of the boot, we need to make sure it's nice and tall. This is not a normal structural house. We haven't got a framework to work with, but you'll notice that I put a single line of blocks to indicate where the shape of the boot is going to go, and that sort of allowed me to mold the rest of my boot where I want everything to go. Doing an organic build is actually a lot different to doing any other kind of build. It's got a whole different set of rules. The blocks are not independent of each other. You don't have the framework, the walls and the windows. Everything is one continuous flow to give an overall shape. You'll notice there's not even much block variation. It's pretty much the same, and there are no strict rules. You'll see that blocks are kind of all over the place just to try and get that perfect shape, and it takes a lot more refining to get that right. I shaved off a few blocks and added some more on the top, again to try and get the proportions and the shape just the way I wanted it, and I think I've just about got everything that I wanted, which means we can go into detailing this a little bit further. I wanted to add some shoelaces, and tried my hand at some fences, which didn't end up looking as perfect as I'd like. This is quite a clean boot, and so I wanted to add some slabs just to indicate that instead. I added some grey stained clay to indicate the holes where the laces go in. For the most part, we've just built a boot, and if you've got something that looks like this, excellent. I would go slightly bigger or not much smaller than what I have made here at least, because on the inside there's actually not all that much space, as you will see. Here at the heel is where the door is going to be, just a simple spruce staircase in any sort of style that you want, and a nice little archway that I've made sure looks really cracked and rustic. It goes with the style of boot that I've got here. This is meant to be one that's just been tossed into a field, and we're going to make it a lot more overgrown later on. We're going to add a few windows because we do need to let in some natural light to the interior, which we will go over later. The green works really well here. It accentuates the natural setting that we're going to put this boot in. Obviously at this point we are now turning the boot into a house. By adding windows, we're going to add a roof and all sorts of things. So wherever there is a decent flat surface, like on the side of the shoe there, we're going to add a window or two. On the top, you can add some patches of grass with some long grass and ferns and flowers on top to really make sure that it looks overgrown and rustic looking. Honestly, I really enjoy how this has come out. I'm quite proud of it. This was my first attempt at trying anything like this. On the top of the boot, we got a balcony. Now this is where we're going to have the actual structure, but we're going to mimic the style of the boot, meaning that it's not going to be particularly rigid in style. We are going to have a minimalistic framework, just 2 sets of 3 pillars, which we will make a roof go over the top. Now while I start making the roof as a normal cone shape, this is actually going to end up looking a lot more organic as it fit better with the boot itself. Now my advice would be make those 6 pillars really nice and tall. I'm actually going to end up moving the roof up a few blocks to mimic the height of the boot. However, I do encourage, as with all of my builds, that you find your own style. You'll notice that at the bottom I've got a nice archway over my roof, and I've moved it up a few blocks as I said. So now you can see how it's started as a very normal looking roof, but has quickly transformed into placing blocks all over the shop to try and give it some real mess, real organic movement to it. You can start off with something normal and then make it curve upwards, giving it real height, particularly at the top of it, and then making sure you extend it so it's got a really nice overhang. Straight edges on a build like this are not as pleasurable as some others. This is a very strange build. I find that people either struggle with organics and are good at structures, or vice versa, are great at organics but struggle with some of the more structural stuff. So don't worry if this is something that doesn't come as naturally to you, it is just practice that will get you there. But as you'll notice, the roof has a very, very messy shape and style to it, and it is flowing as much as the boot itself. So just experiment, shave off blocks, put blocks back, and try and get something that looks really good and fits in completely. Having a bit of distance between the boot and the top of the roof actually separates the two parts and distinguishes them. So we've got most of our boot here. We're just going to do some final touches, adding a signature chimney as I always do to anything rustic on this channel, using cobblestone walls, cobblestone blocks. And for this one, in fact, I'm going to add 2, one on the back and one on the top, slightly smaller, and all that does is just gives 2 different Y coordinates to look at when you look at the peak of this build. On top of the roof, I added some more long grass accompanied by some grass to again make it look like it's really overgrown. And that's it. That is the boot house. It's a fairy tale organic build. And I've kind of gone over a lot about organic building and how it differs from a traditional way of doing things. So I'd love to hear your opinion, but I'm not done yet. I want to take you through what the interior looks like as well. I don't want just to show you the outside. People do want to know what we can do and what sort of space we're dealing with. But that inner forest is going to look lovely. So here's our lovely boot house. From the view of the floor, let's go and take a quick look inside, shall we? So we're going through our nice little stone entrance, and we've got an immediate reception room where there's just a lot of bookshelves to decorate, and we can go down a little hallway to a kitchen. Everything is styled in a very wooden, rustic manner to match the outside, and we've got a few tricks that I've shown you in previous episodes. The windows do in fact reach into the rooms in the shoe, and you'll notice that this is almost a perfect shape and size for a bedroom, for some rooms in here. It's not particularly spacious, but it's got a really homely feel. On the back of the boot, we can use some ladders with some not so straight ladders to get into our storage rooms. Each one of these could be something specific, like a brewing room, an enchanting room, whatever you fancy. And then at the top we've got our nice balcony, which we can either use to just jump off or admire the view from the top of our boot. But this was only my attempt, and I'm no great shakes at organics. I do not claim to be an expert in this at all. In fact, I'm sure there are many of you that will attempt this and really blow away what I've done here. What I want to show you is what Pearl has done, which is I asked her to do a boot house in a similar way to mine, and this is what she made. Pearl is way better at organics than I am. In fact, that's what she specializes in Minecraft. So she said that making organics, it has a lot to do with size. She was able to get a much nicer shape than I was, but it would take a lot longer and a lot more effort to get everything you would need to make this one. She has shoelaces, she's got some trees, and she's got a much larger structure on the top. So if you wanted to take the whole boot house thing to the next level, and I mean the next level, perhaps you could even try something like this. You'll even notice that she's got 3 tones of color. She's got the darker brown, the lighter brown, and a darker soul underneath, and she's even mixed in some other blocks to get a different texture. There are all sorts of tips and tricks and techniques involved in making a build like this. It's absolutely insane. Pearl actually recorded this for her channel, and I will leave a link to that if you want to watch it in the description. So, that's it for the boot tutorial. It is very, very difficult to do a tutorial on organics, because there is no set block by block by block. It's all about trying to encourage you as the builder to paint rather than place blocks, and that sounds really silly, but you are just trying to essentially 3D model a shape rather than plan out a structure and detail that structure afterwards. It is a completely different style to the way that we operate normally, and hopefully some of those things have come through in this video. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you have any ideas, anything at all, please let me know in the comments down below. Even if it's something simple like a modern house, any sort of design, I'm all ears for your ideas. Thank you again, and goodbye.